Hello, fourth year students. Today we are going to deal with the last items in the semantic functions of the sentence elements, and these items are going to be the direct and indirect objects. So to start with the semantic functions of the direct object, we can say that typically the direct object functions semantically as affected. So if you remember, we said the affected is the animate or inanimate participant that does not cause the action to happen, so it is not the subject, but it is involved in the action in some other way. So what does it mean that to be involved in the action some other way? It means that it is going to be influenced by the action. The action is in fact done by the subject to the direct object. So in this way, we are going to call it semantically affected. Are there other semantic functions for the direct object? Yes. The first new semantic function we are going to deal with here today is locative. You remember that we said the subject can also be locative, and locative function means the function that indicates the place or position of the subject of the action or state. So if you have your direct object coming in the form of a noun or a noun phrase or a nominal clause, and it refers to the place where the action happens, this means that you are going to call it semantically as what as a locative direct object. If we examine the following sentences, we walked the streets, he swam the river, he passed the notice, the horse jumped the fence. You see, all these sentences, they are having what? They are having the direct object in the form of a noun phrase. So they said that when we paraphrase such sentences, we are going to find them that they are not originally having what direct object. They are originally having prepositional phrases functioning as adverb of a place. So we walked the streets. Originally, or in a paraphrase, it can be we walked along or through the streets. So along or through the streets is the place where the action of walking happens. This means that the when we delete the preposition along or through, the streets here becomes what a normal noun phrase, and its function is going to be changed from an adverb of a place into what into a direct object. So since now this direct object refers to the place where the action of walking happens, this means that it is going to be called semantically a locative direct object. The same thing we can find for the rest three sentences. He swam the river, or in the paraphrase it can be he swam across the river. He passed the notice. In the paraphrase it is he passed by the notice. The horse jumped the fence. In the paraphrase it is the horse jumped over the fence. Can we find other verbs that can be used in the same position that is followed by locative direct object? In fact, yes. He's telling us that the locative direct object can be also used after verbs like turn, leave, reach, surround, penetrate, mount, cross, and climb. How can we know that this is a direct object after we delete the preposition? They said that you can simply change such sentences into what? Passive. And you remember when we change the sentence into passive, we need to delete the subject and use the subject, the direct object to be instead of it, to replace the subject. Okay? So if you can do that to the previous sentences, this means that what we said about having a direct object in the sentence is correct. So for example, if we take the sentence, the horse jumped the fence, if we can change this sentence into passive, this means that the fence is correctly dealt with or correctly regarded as what? As a direct object. So he said that we can say in the passive, the fence was jumped by the horse. Is it clear? Since now we can change this sentence into the passive, so the fence is correct. What is correctly is the correct direct object for this sentence. Another semantic function for the direct object is called affected. Affected with e. Okay, the original function, semantic function for the direct object, as we said, it is affected with a, and now we are having a new semantic function that is called affected with e. So are they different? Yes, they are different. The affected direct object is the noun or is the noun or noun phrase or nominal clause that refers to something which exists only by virtue of the activity indicated by the verb. So, what does this definition mean? Let us examine these sentences in order to understand the definition of the affected direct object. We have Bird invented television. John has painted a new picture. I'm writing a letter. So in these three sentences, we have direct object coming in the form of a noun or a noun phrase. So what are we going to regard this direct object semantically? Is it affected or affected? It is in fact affected. Why is that? They said that the television or the new picture or the letter, they have they have no existence before the action was done by the subject. For instance, when I say I'm writing a letter, before the action, before doing the action by the subject, which is writing, do you think that there was a letter? No. Okay. After the action was done or was caused to happen by the subject, which is I, here what is the result now? We are having from this action, we have a letter. So this means that the letter here, as a direct object, it refers to something that was created as a result of the action. But if the action was not done by the subject, there would be no thing. There would be no direct object. Is it clear? Same thing for television. How is the television, or how has television come into existence? It has come into existence as a result of the action of inventing it, that it was caused by or done by Bird. The same thing for a new picture. Why do we have now a new picture? Because he painted it. Is it clear? Before the action of painting, we didn't have any new picture. But now we are having the new picture, or the new picture was created as a result of the action of painting that was done by John. Uh, in fact, you are going to see that within the affected direct object, you are going to see types, okay, different forms for the affected direct object. One of these forms is called what? Cognate. What do you mean by cognate? Cognate is the affected direct object that partially or wholly repeats the verb, uh, the meaning of the verb, or the meaning and the form of the verb, both of them. For example, when we say to sing a song, she sings a song. Song here is a direct object, okay, comes in the form of a noun phrase. Semantically, it is called affected. Why is it affected? Affected with E and not with A. Affected because this song has been created, has been made as a result of the action of singing done by she. Is it clear? Now, do we have any relation between the verb and the direct object? Sing and the song, you see that they are what? They are repeated. There is some sort of repetition. The object is repeating repeating the verb in some of the letters, in some of the sounds, and in meaning. Is the meaning here? Is the meaning here or the repetition here wholly or partially? It is partially. The same thing when, but when we say I dream a dream or he fights a fight, you see here the verb, both of the verb and the object, they are completely similar. So here we have a whole or a complete repetition done by the subject, by the direct object to the verb. Again, what kind of direct object we are having when I say I dream a dream or he fights a fight? These are affected because they are not existed before the action. Is it clear? But when I say he died a miserable death, die and death. So death here as a direct object repeats partially or partially repeats the verb. So what do we call this? The direct object, the affected direct object in this way, we call it cognate direct affected direct object that partially repeats the verb. Another type of affected direct object is coming or may come in a form of a verbal noun. What does it mean, a verbal noun? A verbal noun that has the same form of a verb, that as the same word can have or the same form can be a noun or a verb. And this verbal noun usually is used in sentences with verbs which are described to be common or having general meaning, such as do, make, have, take, and give. In fact, such constructions they are commonly found to be used by or preferably used to be by native speakers in colloquial English. But in formal English, they don't like to use this. They like to use what? The intransitive verb. Okay? This noun, the verbal noun, I mean, they like to use it in a form of intransitive verb. What about meaning? Again, you are going to see the meaning in the colloquial English to be idiomatic, while in the formal English it is not going to be idiomatic. And I think you know what we mean by idiomatic meaning. The idiomatic meaning is that it does not have a literal meaning. It is different. The whole meaning of the construction is different from the meaning of the individual parts of the structure. For example, we say he did little work that day. So the direct object is what? Work. Work here is a noun. Why do we call it what? A verbal noun. Why do we call it verbal noun? Because work can have the same form as a verb. Okay? Preceded by a verb, work here as a direct object is preceded by the verb did, which is a common verb or a verb that has a general meaning. This sentence is usually said in colloquial English, but in the formal English, what do they say? Do they say he worked little that day? You see, they used work as a verb, as an intransitive verb, in fact. Is it clear? He made several attempts to contact me. Where's the direct object here? It is what? Attempts. Attempts is the direct object. We call it verbal noun because it has the same form as a verb. Attempt can be a noun and can be a verb. Here it is in this sentence, it is what used as a direct object preceded by a common verb which is made. In the formal English, we can say he attempted several times to contact me. So you see here the noun which is attempt has been used in the formal English as an intransitive verb. We have other examples like the prisoner made no comment, he's having a smoke, he takes a rest, and he gave a jump or a yell. Okay, now you see that with in the front of the last four sentences, I put two brackets, and between them you can find question marks, which means that here I need you now to write the form of the sentence in the formal English. What do you think? It is going to be in which way? So this is your job, please. Okay? Now, before we leave this point or this type of the affected direct object, there are two important notes that we have to mention. Note number one, there are some verbal nouns that are preceded by verbs like have and take. In fact, when you see this, when you see that there you have the verbs have and take, this means that your subject is agentive. But they said that if you use give after the verbal nouns, this means that your subject is affected. So your subject is not doing the action by himself or by itself or by herself, but in fact the action is done to it. Okay? For example, we say he gave a jump in contrast with he took a jump. Okay, so instead adjusting that he could not help the action, so he gave a jump. This here, since we have before a jump we have the verb give, this means that the subject is affected, not uh, agent. But when we say he took a jump, because a jump is preceded by the verb take, so this means that here he is what is agentive. I need you now to check the meaning of gave a jump and took a jump. To give a jump or and to take a jump. What does it mean? What does each one of them mean? Is it clear? Why with give we have affected subject, while with take we have agent subject. If you can identify or figure out the meaning of the idiom to give a jump or to take a jump, you can understand why he in the first sentence with give is affected, while in the second sentence with take it is what agent. Okay, this is again the second job for you. Okay, now number two, note number two, he's telling us that in number one we said that with have we should have what agent of subject, but in fact there are some exceptional sentences. For example, when we say the baby had a bath, the baby had a bath. So since the verb here is have, we are going to expect that the subject is agentive. But in this sentence, can you do you expect that the baby can be agentive? The baby can cause the action of having the bath to happen? Of course not. The baby is cannot do that for himself or herself. Of course, there should be and someone, and naturally it is the mom, the mother, who can do that for the baby. Is it clear? So here, the baby is going to be what affected subject. The same thing when we say he took a fall or he took a beating. Okay, so now when we say he took a beating, in number one, in note number one, we said that if your verb is take, this means that your subject is agentive. But when I say such a sentence, he took a beating, do you expect that someone can cause the action of beating for himself? Of course not. So this means that he is now going to be what as affected subject. This is what we want to say, that sometimes, not all the times, that we are going to stick, we are going to follow these rules. The meaning of sentences is going to tell us whether we are having agentive subject or affected subject. Is it clear? So please pay attention to this. Another kind of affected direct object, which is regarded to be dubious or questionable, is when you are having the direct object coming in a form of a noun or a noun phrase that expresses extent or measure. For example, when I say he ran a mile, it costs $10. It weighs almost a ton. So a mile, $10, a ton, these are the noun phrases that function as what as direct objects in these sentences. Now, in form, they are what noun phrases, so they are similar to the direct object. We call them direct object. But when we come to their behavior, we cannot call them direct object. Is it clear? Why? The first thing is that can we change these sentences into passive? Can I say a mile was run? No, this is incorrect, grammatically incorrect in English. This is one. Second, when I want to ask about the direct object, usually in normal sentences, I can change it into a WH question by using the WH word what. But when I come to such sentences and I want to ask, for example, about a mile, can I use what? No. I'm going to use what? How far? I'm going to say, how far did he run? Is it clear? So this is telling us that in behavior, these noun phrases cannot be regarded as what? As direct objects. So he is telling us that they are rather analyzed as SVA and not SVO. Is it clear? So they are analyzed, such sentences, for these two reasons that we mentioned. These sentences are analyzed, in fact, as subject, verb, adverb, and not as subject, verb, direct object. Okay? So with this, we have finished with what? With the semantic functions of the direct object. We said the direct object mainly has a major function, which is what? Which is the affected, but also it can be locative when it refers to the place of the action. It can be effected when it refers to something that comes into existence as a result of the action done by the subject. And you see that the affected direct object has types, as we said, that it can be cognate, it can be a verbal noun, or it can be a noun that refers to, or a phrase that refers to a measure or extent. Okay. Then we are coming now to deal with what? With the semantic functions of the indirect object. So the typical semantic role for the indirect object is what? Is the recipient. And you remember the definition of the recipient. We said the recipient is the animate, okay? Is the animate participant that is passively implicated by the verb, passively involved in the action. Okay, now what does this mean? It means that it is not the subject that causes the action to happen. It is not the direct object that is affected by the action, but it is what? It is going to receive the result of the action. It is the animate. First, it should be animate participant. This is very important. And second, it is going to take the result, to receive the result of the action. And here we are going to call, that's why we are going to call it what? Indirect, sorry, recipient indirect object. Now, is there a new function, semantic function for the indirect object? In fact, yes, it is called affected. Okay, affected. Now, what do you mean by affected? Before that, you remember that affected is the typical role for what? For the direct object. And but now we are going to see that it can also be a semantic function for the indirect object. How is that? You can find this in what? In sentences in which you are using the main verb like give, pay, or owe. So here, after these verbs, you are going to have what? Two objects. Okay, you are going to have two objects. The indirect object is going to be what? Affected, while the direct object is going to be effected. How is that? Let us examine the first sentence. I gave the door 3 kicks. I gave the door 3 kicks. Okay, so here your verb is gave or to give. It is followed by two objects, indirect and direct. So the door is what? The door is the indirect object, and the 3 kicks is the direct object. Because we know that which one should come before the other. It is the indirect that should come before the direct. Is it clear? Now, they are saying here that the door is affected. The door is affected. It is indirect object, but semantically it is what? Affected. Why is that? Because I kicked what? The action of kicking done by the subject is done to what? It is done to the door. Is it clear? So here the door as an indirect object is what? Is the affected. What about the 3 kicks as the direct object? Is it clear? 3 kicks here, in fact, come into existence as a result of the action that I made. Is it clear? Before I did the action of kicking, there were no kicks. But after I made the action, after I kicked the door, there were what? 3 kicks. So this means that here the direct object 3 kicks is going to be what? Affected. Is it clear? And in normal sentences, we can say that I kicked the door 3 times. I kicked the door 3 times. I is the subject, kicked is the verb. The door you see here, the door is a direct object which is affected, and the 3 times is adverb of time, referring to frequency. Okay? Another sentence. I paid her a visit. I paid her a visit. So, so we have I as a subject, paid as a verb, and this verb is followed by two objects, her as indirect object and a visit as what as the direct object. Now, if we examine the semantic functions of both of the direct and the indirect, we are going to find something strange. Her as the indirect object is going to be affected. Who's going to be affected or influenced by the action of visiting? It is what? It is her. So it is affected. Now, what about a visit? A visit here, it is going to be syntactically as a direct object. Semantically, it is affected. Why is it affected? Because this direct object has come into existence, is created as a result of the action done by the subject. Is it clear? So before the subject goes to visit this person, there was no visit. After he visited her, there was a visit. Is it clear? So this the direct object here as a noun phrase refers to something, refers to an action, to something that was created as a result of what? Of the action made or done by the subject. So normally we can, in normal sentences, we can simply say I visited her. Okay, I visited her. So when we analyze this sentence, I visited her, I is a subject, visited is the verb, and her is a direct object that is affected. Affected, semantically affected by the action of visiting. Is it clear? So they said that the paraphrase of such sentences can be equivalent to what? To clauses with the direct object as affected object. So with this, we have finished explaining the semantic functions of the sentence elements. Okay, we talked about the subject, the complement, the direct object, and the indirect object. I hope that everything is clear for you. Please, if you have any question or any comment about them, leave your questions and comments on the Google Classroom, and we are going to work together in answering them. Finally, I'm going to post for you an assignment regarding this topic, which is the semantic functions of the sentence elements, also through the Google Classroom. And as you have done in the previous assignment, that you have to post your answers through a file that is attached to the Google Classroom. Okay, you should not write your answers in the comments, please. Thank you and see you soon.